We spoke to Houston Mayor Bill White earlier this year before he received stimulus funds for his city. Back then, he said he had $2 billion worth of projects on the board and that he expected to create tens of thousands of jobs via mass transit and road projects. Let's check back in with the mayor, who joins us from Houston. Mr. Mayor, welcome back to Bloomberg News.
Great to be with you.
Sir, Treasury Secretary Geithner telling lawmakers today in that soundbite we just played that the stimulus is, quote, on its expected path. Would you agree with that assessment?
Well, it's a little slow. You know, there's all these bureaucratic processes and mandates and hoops you got to jump through. But obviously having some of the money that we can expend now will allow us to increase employment and the activity without having to raise local taxes, and that's a good thing.
Mr. Mayor, did you get the money you expected?
Not yet. There is money that is in the pipeline for things like an airport expansion, some energy conservation, not as much on surface transit or mass transit as we thought was warranted. There's politics involved in this process, as you well know. But I'll tell you, there will be some effect when we get these stimulus dollars. We just would prefer to get them sooner rather than later.
Mr. Mayor, do you have any sense on when you might, in fact, get those stimulus dollars?
Well, you know, we've been given different projections, a lot in the second part of this year. But for the surface transportation, as an example, it required projects to be shovel-ready, and yet it would have been a waste of money to have designed projects and had all the environmental clearances, which takes years, unless you had a source of funding to begin with. So now people are having to expedite projects, and, you know, it's sort of a catch-22.
Mr. Mayor, I wanted to get back to the comment you made just a moment ago about politics being involved. How frustrating is that, particularly when you have many of your citizens and many Americans who, for lack of a better word, find themselves in desperate straits?
I mean, it's very frustrating. And I think we ought to learn from this experience. Heavens, I hope we don't have to go through it again. That it would make a lot more sense to have money distributed directly to local governments on some formula basis, or some local government entities on a formula basis, reduce the amount of federal mandates, require people to show what they're spending for, but without all the mandates and the silos that are built in and the various levels of government that it has to go through, each of which takes a little slice for overhead.
Now, Mr. Mayor, I'm sure you're aware that Smart Growth America, that's that National Urban Planning Coalition, said that Texas spent almost half its stimulus road funds on new roads or extra lanes. And there are studies that show that the repair work on roads creates about 16% more new jobs. That's according to the coalition. But the critics say that the decision makers took the money and went on a lane building binge. I was wondering if you might care to comment on that.
Well, I mean, there's a need in the fastest growing state in the country by job growth and population growth for more lanes, but there's also a need for more repairs, and that's a case that the city of Houston has been making. I would tend to agree with the criticism that there's more spent on new construction than there should be relative to repairs. Probably less on surface transportation than on mass transit.
Mr. Mayor, in our final minute, I know that you have also heard the talk in Washington and in state capitals around the country that perhaps it might be time for another stimulus package. Was the one that Congress passed too little? Does the American public need more? Do municipal leaders like yourself need more money to help your cities get out of this economic downturn?
Well, the first thing I'd say, you got to look at this for the long term, not only as a citizen of a community, but as a citizen of our nation.
Right.
The fact is we're in a global recession, and it's going to be a deep recession, and it takes a while to get out. And what I'd be concerned about is decisions that were made for the short term that sacrifice the long term. So, you know, it's easy for somebody to say, I need more money, but we ought to say, remember that if we're talking about financing it through debt, then eventually people are going to pay for that debt. It's going to be government on the installment plan, and that could have a negative effect on long-term growth.
And, Mr. Mayor, we're going to have to leave it there. Mayor Bill White of Houston joining us. Mr. Mayor, thanks.